Hello everyone and welcome to a patch review, and yes, it's a review and not a preview this time around, as this is already live in the live game now and you can play it and test it out yourself, as it has a lot of good changes. You didn't want to get it out of as a surprise, and it is a nice surprise indeed, as we get really good new maps with Kreide in 3 different forms. This is a completely new map based on the German north, the northern coast around the Baltic Sea. Really cool map. And it has a 1v1 version as well, which makes me happy. We get another 1v1 map as well, but more importantly, we get a lot of quality of life and bug changes and fixes, and then some really good gameplay changes as well. Most importantly, a recon buff and stealth changes. And the recon buff is pretty big for the normal very good optics and exceptional optics units. The recon units, it is quite sizable buff of 1/3 or 1/4 of their recon power being increased. And then there's also some nice changes to stealth. First of all, building stealth has been reduced, and it is forest and building stealth is now the same. And then, more importantly, units that fire on you and that have been spotted, the time until they get unspotted has been changed from 5 to 10 seconds. So that is a pretty nice change as well. There have been some other slight tweaks around all of this as well, but the buff to recon will help new players a lot using those units and being able to see the enemy. It's not a massive change. You don't want to go in that with some tippy toes and not completely buff them over the edge or risk over buffing them and having them kind of feel like map hacks. They don't do that yet, and there might still be a couple of changes needed in the future, but recon is feeling a lot better now, and that is nice because a lot of new players struggled with using recon and struggled with seeing enemies and were frustrated by it. And it's still even an issue on high level that you can abuse stealth in some scenarios really easily. There, as I said, the mechanics are not perfect, but it's some nice changes in the right direction. I especially like that the reconcealment of unit takes longer until they are unspotted again. So all of those changes really nice. And we also have a hell of a lot of balance changes, so let's talk about all the other changes here as well, and let's get into that. As unlike usually, I want to go with the other map and not talk about the maps in the end. So yeah, Kreide, and then we also get a new chemical version, and this chemical version was in the works for quite a while, and we had it in Destructive in the past already, but AI was not able to use it and so on, so Eugen had to tinker on it a bit longer. But I absolutely love this version of chemicals. It's so much better, and it's a river map done right in my eyes compared to the early chemical version where you always had this annoying forest fight. The middle has been improved a decent bit as well, and you now find corner to corner. The river crossings really matter, which are plentiful, unlike other river maps on this one. So it's a nice map for doing this on as well. And yeah, river crossings can be blocked if you rush here quickly, but the other side is faster there. The red side is faster over here and so on. And the middle is still a grind fest, but in a much better way in my eyes than previously. So I really enjoy what they did with chemicals. And yep, this is a new 1v1 map that, with the rank changes that they are about to announce today, with more information in the dev blog, hopefully we'll get into the rank pool soon as well. So let's move on to the gameplay changes. So let's start with the bug fixes. There are a good couple of them. Most important one in my eyes is that there is a bug fix to AI usage of bridges. They can now cross all bridges. Some bridges before were a bit buggy and the AI just didn't use them. There were a couple of artillery pieces, forgot which one exactly, but they just didn't do any stun damage. All artillery now do stun damage. And then there's also counter battery that has been fixed now. because for some reason only individual guns were firing. Like if you put all your guns on counter battery, only a single one was firing at the enemy artillery. Now all guns fire at the enemy artillery once spotted. So counter battery can be used now again. It's still not super efficient. Doing it manually still is a bit faster, but you can use it now without worrying if it works or not. So those are really solid changes. And yeah, let's get into the nitty-gritty of the balance changes now. And then I want to talk about artillery first, because there has been some suppression buffs in the artillery tab. Quite a couple of artillery pieces, especially the smaller artillery pieces, have gained increased suppression. For example, the 81mm mortar and the other mortars as well, going up from 140 to 160. Here we go up from 115 to 122. So suppression across the board for lighter pieces has been increased for mortars and for light artillery pieces. So that is a nice change to increase the capabilities of these. M109s have slightly been reduced in range from 21 to 18 kilometers. So that is a general change here. And then availability for MLRS has been reduced to 1 per card. So if we have a look at, for example, 39th and the artillery here, the Grad, they are only 1 per card now. So 10v10 is saved. Because the Grad systems were really overrepresented in 10v10 games especially. And with Pact having so much more than NATO in those, you saw a lot of Grads. You still can get most of them, because they also came with an increase in cards in the most part, but you have to use way more slots, so it's way less efficient, and we most likely will just see less MLRS in 10v10s, which is a good change, because it was really obnoxious and overbearing. The pack still has more of them, you just can't get all of, like every deck can get them still, but you can't just get them in insane numbers in every deck, like 4, 6, 8 MLRS in one deck. That's not the case anymore. So let's start with the Americans with the general changes. And there we start with an availability buff to the M1 Abrams. It goes from 5 to 6 base availability. Tendency that we will see for other tanks as well. Kind of going on the same pattern as comparable T-64s, which had already a bit better availability compared to other tanks. Most other tanks in this category and area catch up now there. So 5 to 6 here for the Abrams. And then we also have a buff to Sheridans that go down in price. 80 points here for 100 points for the normal Sheridan. This CV1 130 to 100. So those are nice changes as well. And we have the M60A1 Rise going up to 9 availability as well. So the 35th getting buffed a bit back from the nerfs that they received in the past, which were overdone in my eyes. And then we have a couple of helicopter changes to Recon helicopters that were a bit underpowered. The JOH out of the 9th got buffed. It went down in price from 65 to 55 and availability 2 to 4. So it might be worthwhile taking now, though I still am not a fan of this thing. Then we have another general change. That is the nerf of the suppression of 40mm grenade launchers. And also their capabilities of firing at tanks, I believe, has been taken away again. So they still do good damage, and they still are really efficient against lightly armored or non-armored stuff. But the suppression, the stun capabilities against tanks and so on, has been taken away. They went from 80 to 40 suppression, so they don't stun down everything immediately anymore. We have a couple of other buffs. The National Guard Cav Scouts with Dragon have been increased from 4 to 6 availability. So They do a pretty decent job now, and they are quite solid. Airborne has been reduced in price from uh, 70 to 65 points. There we go. The 84 guys. So 101st might be back in business with the Sheridan and the Airborne price changes. And that will be interesting to see how they do with this, as there is more to come for them, I believe. As I said, suppression going up. The weapon range of MLRS, cluster, and HE has been reduced slightly as well, which is interesting. Also means that the accuracy of them has been reduced. They go to 32 kilometers as well. I believe their minimum range has been changed slightly as well. But yeah, that's the important change here, that the max range here has been reduced. And then, which an interesting change is the COCV has gone up from 3 to 4 availability. So they now come in higher numbers. So another slight buff to 9, which will be interesting to see how this goes. And then we also have the M140, the one with the 50 cal, be reduced as well. So 9 buffs. And we'll see how popular those will be, as community still is rather split about that. On the par of it was pretty fine beforehand. I don't think it needs any buffs, but it got some slight ones now. They're not the end of the world, like one extra COCV won't change the game massively, and slightly cheaper 50 cals won't do it either. But yeah, and base availability, yeah, one change here doesn't change it either. Like the price change, I think is fine. Availability changes okay as well in this case. And yeah, the COCV, they here still have the 1 second aim time. I'm not sure if that will change anytime soon, as that's the helicopter aim time, or if that's still to change it eventually. But yeah, for now, COCV is still pretty scary. And then we have a couple of other smaller changes. The T-Chap went down in price, so another slight 9th buff. And the Avenger went down in price as well, in both its forms. So 101st and 9th, really the profiteers of these changes, getting different buffs here. And then the accurate gun, the artillery with guided ammunition, now can be taken at 0 vet, so that you can get 2 of them. So that's an interesting change as well. Might actually make this unit worthwhile. And yeah, 9th, really the profiteer of these changes for the Americans, together with 101st. So I'll see how those will play out now. Let's get to the British. They have a couple of changes as well. And we start with the Challenger. As the Challenger Mark II goes up from 4 to 5 base availability. So buff 2 second UK and first armored. And that will be quite interesting to see how that plays out, as I feel both of these divisions were in a pretty okay state already on the previous patches. Second UK we have seen a lot in the league last season. So with all the recon changes and so on, obviously all these things will play out a bit differently as well. For example, the ATGM vehicles being easier to spot might be a nerf for the 9th playstyle, so I'm not even sure 9th in general got buffed in this patch, but it got buffed individually. Yeah. Challenger here, coming around with better availability. I think it's a fine change. I'm just not sure if second UK needed a buff, but we can still take something away from them in the future. A unit that absolutely needed a buff, and a division that needed a buff, is the Rarden, the Berliner Gruppierung, Berlin Command, getting a buff here from 40 to 35 points. The Rarden might be worthwhile taking again. Another division that deserved the buff, or at least the unit deserved it, is the Buccaneer seat now having 40 ECM. So that is quite nice. A couple of other MNet change buffs here as well, which I'm happy about. I'm not certain all of these were necessary, as this unit here already was pretty fine beforehand, maybe? But it was on the more expensive end. Now it's on the cheaper end for its power in my eyes. Gun group going from 55 to 50 points. So that is a nice change here for me. Yeah, I'm not sure how you guys feel about it. Terrier Carl Gustav, the first UK forward deploy, went from 5 to 6 base availability. So another buff here to the first UK. So British really back in business. Paras going down to 65 points. So another good MNet buff. This unit was a bit on the expensive end beforehand for sure. Now it's in an okay range, and with forward deploy and lower ADE, an absolute solid unit that you take when you can get. Wombat went down in price as well, from 45 to 35 points. Gurkha rifles got a massive buff, so yeah, you see my favorite division will be absolutely all over the place. Gurkha rifles going to 85 points. Pretty happy about that. Then we also have mod rifles, which only come in 4th UK. That is a division that absolutely needed buffs. Going from 55 to 50 points, so 4th UK with an efficient infantry unit now. Obviously, all the artillery buffs here coming in for this division as well. And then we have the other Wombat units that you get with the British going down in price as well. The Rover and the FV Wombat going down in price. The Gurkha one did miss it, I believe. So that's a bit of a shame. And then the LML ATMP went up from 6 to 8 base availability. So another MNet buff. This unit is up worthwhile bringing now, especially with Wombat, and giving you forward deploy. So ATMP LML. Yeah, here we go. That is a nice change for this division. We also have a card increase in 4th UK. So the Chieftain Mark 6-2 went from 1 to 2 cards. And that is a really nice change, because that gives you the capability as 4th that you want of being able to spam cheap stuff. Your cheaper tanks, giving you a distinction away from 1st UK. Now you can spam cheap chieftains with more expensive chieftains as a really nice combo. And these tanks here are pretty solid. So, yeah, I still feel like if they would be 95 points, it would go all the way. But it's a nice start for 4th to get them back in business where they really weren't beforehand. With the mod rifle changes, with the Rover Wombat, or the FV Wombat changes and so on, this division might go places now. We'll see. MNet buffs, the more impactful ones though. So let's go to West Germany, where we start with the Fernspeer as the first unit to get buffed. This unit was overpriced compared to other GSR units with similar stats, going from 90 to 80 points now. That is pretty nice for 5th Panzer. Solid 5th Panzer buff. Then obviously all the other artillery changes, including the range reduction from the MLRS, the Mars going down there in range as well. And then we have Kanonjagdpanzer going down in price from 50 to 40. So that is a nice one. And on the other side, Sonderwagen 4 going up to 30 points for some reason. It has security and all, but I'm not sure why, if this really needed. It doesn't have smoke, so, and it only has a mediocre MG. But that is what it is. We also have a big change to the Weasels, so more buffs to MNet, or changes to MNet. The health went down, but the price went down as well. And I think that is a really solid change in favor of the Weasel, as they also got more availability in this version. So they went from 10 to 6 hit points. The 10 hit points didn't make sense. That's only for full tanks. was in the 6 to 8 range. 6 makes more sense for a small vehicle with only 2 guys inside. So, yeah, it's only 6 hit points now, but it's also 40 to 35 points and 9 to 12 base availability. And the Weasel Toe 2 also went from 85 to 75 points. So your spam potential as MNET has increased massively across the board with the changes to all the British infantry and with the changes to the Weasel. A change that is unfortunately not in here, in my eyes, for the Germans, is a change to Fallschirmjägers, especially if you compare them to the Paras, which just got buffed. It's a bit weird, but there has been no real changes to 2nd Panzer Grenadier, and if you buff them, 2nd Panzer Grenadier gets buffed, and that would be a problem. So, yeah, those changes, unfortunately, not in here. Let's talk about the French as the next nation. And there we start with a nerf to the EBR rear armor. That is not really important. And we have a lot of suppression changes. That is about it, unfortunately, for the Frenchies this time around in the general stuff. So the 152nd got some TRM 2000 and so on transport options added to their 20mm AA guns, but that is about it. So yeah, Frenchies staying relatively unchanged for this one. Not the same can be said for the Dutch. Their changes have been across the board, starting with the YBR PRI with the 25mm, going down from 50 to 45 points. The stabilizer has been removed, so in general still should be a buff, but it is not a super accurate gun on the motion anymore. The Leopard NL went up in price to 85 points, as it should be. So yeah, that's now the same price as its German counterpart, so that makes sense. But yeah, the YPRs, you get more of them in the division, so in general, still a buff to the division in that regard, and there's a good couple more to come. The Dragon 1 going from 30 to 25 and getting more availability. It's still a pretty terrible unit, but it might be now in the range where, as a meme and as a spam unit, you might be taking them. More importantly, the Panzer Infantry Dragon went into a reasonable price from 55 to 40 points. So 15 point changes, but it was massively overpriced before. Now it's at a point where you can consider taking it. And the Law Panzer Infantry also went from 40 to 35 points. So both of these infantry units now are pretty competitive, and that buffs this division massively, especially as they also come in the YPR. So that's a 10-point price change for your baseline infantry with IFV, and that is really solid. The G-Mobilisierte have been renamed into Natres. I have no idea what exactly that means, but that's the name change here. So yeah, solid buff in general, with this slight fix for the Leopard 1NL for this division. And then the most important one is that an iHawk has been added to this division. So if we have a look, and that's really the biggest change of them all, is there's a Dutch iHawk now, and it is in this division. You only get one card, but it is long range AA, and the Cheetah's already good AA for the mid range, so this brings this division a lot further. This really changes things. So 4th Dutch is now a really solid division. Belgium, same buff to their IFV, as it's the same IFV, so the Oerlikon vehicle now at 45 points with the AAV. So a nice buff to the Belgians, which is a division that I like. The Para Scorpions of theirs, which is another buff to MNET, go up in availability from 9 to 12. Same goes for the Scimitar. So both of these go from 9 to 12 base availability. So Mnet really has the vehicles across the board. And then we have Pioneers in the infantry tab, with the RL going down to 50 points. Unit that now might be worthwhile taking. Wasn't really great beforehand. It's still not amazing though. So we'll see how that goes. And then all the artillery changes here. And then we have a couple of their weird... the units having weird speeds. A lot of their supply vehicles having weird speeds before. That has been fixed now. They now go the 65 kilometers off-road speed. But that is not all that important. And then it also got a Mistral, extra Mistral card, which is the biggest buff to it all. Like, the Belgian AA was pretty reliant on Mistrals, so the 16th Belgian now has 2 cards of Mistrals. Fantastic manpad, goes a long way, buffs their AA tab really nicely. And that already brings us to the Pact, and we start with the Soviets. So, a couple of changes here. BTR ZD scratch going up into the speed where it is supposed to be. This one here now goes 60 kilometers off-road, but that's not that big. The T64 at 62 MV goes down to 145 points, so that's another 5-point step. It went down to 150 points before already. So, nice KDA buff. It's at a really fair price point now. So, that is nice. We have all the AT planes. The Su-24s, AT-1 and AT-2, and the MiG-27Ks going down in availability. So, these two here that were really spammable in 76, going down from 3 to 2 base availability. The MiG-27K going from 3 to 2. So that is nerfed to the divisions that were pretty overrepresented. The MiG-27s are in 56. So it's 81 in this case. 56 being the best division in the game, most likely, at least unranked. So that nerf makes sense. And then the W-Ger RPG-7, another 56 and 35 units, went up in price and got an SVD. So yeah, 40 to 45 points now. So that is an interesting change here. Nerfing 56 a bit further. A division that is really overrepresented. So that is nice. And then all the suppression changes. Base availability of the Acacia with guided ammunition. This one here went up. So guided ammunition vehicle now have 2 base availability. So you can take this at... you can take 2 of these now. So 27 can use it if you want to now. It still costs more than the other one. And it's not that much better at the moment. But it's worthwhile considering now taking these again. Which it really wasn't beforehand. The base availability of the D30s went up from 3 to 4. So that is an interesting change as well. And might be increasing the gameplay with these kind of guns as well. So it's not all bad for Soviet artillery. The MLRS nerf, yes, but the normal guns going up. The Dajan version going up in base availability as well. And then we have a good couple more price changes. The Rajvetka BMP2, for example, going down in price, 290, which is impacting quite a lot of divisions. 100 points was a overreaction back in the day, most likely. So yeah, now it comes down a bit again. So yeah, BMP 2 Recon in an interesting spot now. 27th, 79th, and 25th, and the 56, which has the D version, all getting the buff here. So That is going to be interesting for openers to see if the Soviets will run those out in big numbers again. It was a really expensive package beforehand, 150 point package. We'll see now, 10 points cheaper. It's not a massive change, but it might play some role in some opener scenarios now. BRDM 2 Conquerors got a speed increase, so that is interesting. They go to 85 kilometers off-road speed, so that might play a role as well. It's a really common unit. And 85 off-road is quite a solid change as well. So yeah, those units we might see a good bit more again. And then we have recoilless rifle vehicles with the Luats SPG-9 being buffed in availability and also a bit in price. It's a 56 buff, which and 76, but those divisions, those units you didn't really use beforehand, so kind of makes sense to change that. So yeah, those are the most important changes here. I'm not so certain about the cluster artillery. I think it changed, but I don't think it's in here. And an important nerf for 56, the most important change to the Soviets most likely, and the dominance of the 56, is a reload nerf to this, as its reload time went up to 60 seconds, so the M240 has been nerfed in its capabilities a bit. We'll see how that plays out. I think it should be a decent nerf, but I don't think it will take this away from being still pretty strong. But still, change here is nice to see that we got some nerfs on one of the most obnoxious units in the game right now. So that brings us to these Germans, and they didn't get all that many changes here this time around. A nice one is in the air tab for these Germans. The air tab, MiG-23 going up back to 3 base availability, though that is not all that surprising, as the MF now has the same base availability as the ML, and it's not a great fighter, so 3 base availability should have been the case all the time. And yeah, it's nice to see it back up there and being at that point. Outside of that, most units stay unchanged. The SPG-9 UATs goes up in base availability. A couple of speed changes to some transport unit, to some supply units, but nothing there of major importance either. So yeah, those are the changes to the East Germans. Obviously, the MLRS changes and so on, all coming in as well. And then we got some small changes to Berliner Gruppierung itself, which lost a couple of kind of unnecessary slots. And Berliner Gruppierung is here and got cheaper slots elsewhere. All the infantry slots are now 1 cost, for example, for this division. And one of the tank slots also got cheaper. So you lost the 3-point artillery, AA, and helicopter slot, but got cheaper slots elsewhere. And yeah, 1 2-point and 1 3-point slot here added. So Berliner Gruppierung might be buildable now, though with the nerf to the ARM-70s, which were pretty key for this division. You'll see how this plays out, actually. Because, yeah, I'm not certain this was all that massive, as its infantry is still not buffed back, and that is, in my eyes, one of the major issues here. Like, not to the same extent as it was before, at least. So, that's the East Germans. Let's go to the last station with the Polish. And there have been a couple of changes. First, the BT-76 of the Polish went up in base availability from 10 to 12. Their T-72 M1 went up in price. Is that a change that was for the East Germans as well? It should be, right? if this one... Yeah. I was wondering where those would come. The M1 and on both sides here, going up in price, are now 175 points. So, M1 at 70. Resolute here. So, that's a change that is pretty important, obviously. And that nerfs those divisions a bit. They were pretty overperforming. No changes to the M here. The MEV here, 155 points still, so we'll see. But the most impactful of the T-72s went up in price, and that is important. I think this one should have gone up a bit above this one as well, because it's just a better version, and just gives 9th unnecessary edge in that big of an amount over 7th Panzer. So yeah, we'll see. But these two changes are really important, because these two divisions with that were really obnoxious. So good change there. Still fair price for the T-72 M1s, especially as you still have the other ones as cheaper options. So that is a fair change here. And then we have a couple of buffs to the Polish. The Me Too Your RPG, which is this one here, I believe. Yeah, this one going down in price from 80 to 75 points and 1 up in availability. Still not an amazing unit, but one that you might now consider taking. The Dana speed got increased, which is pretty nice as well, as now it can maneuver around, so the Polish Panzerna gets not only nerfs, so that is a nice change here as well. And then we have the Conqueror's speed increases also going for the BRDM Malutka, which is case for the Germans as well. And the Topaz got Resolute added, as it's supposed to be. The Topaz with this one here, with the Strellas, got Resolute added to it. And the price changes here for these has been fixed now as well, between the one of the airborne and the one of the normal units that were changed in prices. They are now fixed. So nothing massive here for the Polish, but still a couple of changes here for them. The artillery changes are the most prevalent of the changes here. So yep, those are the balance patches. More to come. It's not a massive one in individual changes, and I feel like a couple of things are still missing, but Eugen wanted to get the stealth changes and so on out first, and is working on other things, obviously, as well in the background. And those will be the most impactful changes in this patch. So I'm really looking forward to that. The MLRS changes massive for 10v10, and all the other changes, we'll see how they play out. Yeah, couple of buffs and nerfs that I'm hoping we will see soon. Eugen and Starkeem are hard at work, so I'm pretty optimistic that we will get something in the upcoming weeks. And yeah, let's have all fun with this. More tournament announcements soon, guys. Warno League and Warno Super Tournament. Sign up open now, so check all that out down in the description down below.